I am so happy that I was able to attend the fellowship in person in New York at the UN headquarters. It was a 3-week program. And actually, the application is open now, and the deadline is this week for those who want to apply. Go and apply. And the program had really opened my eyes, because we covered the General Assembly. It was the 78th session of the General Assembly. We got to meet top UN officials. I also met the president of the General Assembly, who's also from the Caribbean, Dennis Francis. He's from Trinidad and Tobago. So he was happy to see a Caribbean person in the fellowship. And I also met Selwyn Hart. He's also climate advisor, actually, for the UN. And he's from Barbados. So, this fellowship opened doors for me to make connections and interview these persons and talk with them. And one thing Selwyn Hart told fellows was that, he wanted journalists to do more climate reporting. He's speaking to me from the region. I was like, well, we're trying our best. And I even mentioned this fellowship, Climate Trackers Fellowship, to him, that we have opportunities like that in the region and fellowships and programs that inspire journalists to cover more climate stories, because he was like, more has to be done. I said, yes, more has to be done, but our region is so small. We don't have, some news organizations don't have the resources or the staff or the capacity to even send a journalist just to focus on reporting on the environment. That's in climate. That's just too much to ask news companies sometimes, because the staff isn't available there. Then also to funding for some of these stories and investigations. Organizations don't have the money for it. Some of them can't afford to pay reporters, but they ought to be paid. So there's a lot of issues facing the region as to why journalists don't do as much climate reporting as they should be doing. And, we want persons to understand that, and persons like folks in the UN who wants it, but they'll provide the funding, for it, or some kind of support for journalists in the region if you want that type of coverage.
Welcome to another episode of the Caribbean Climate Calabash podcast. I have here today with me a renowned journalist and editor here in our Caribbean region, but also a fellow and alum of the Climate Tracker program, the Climate Justice Fellowship, Deandre Williamson from the Bahamas. And today we'll be catching up with Deandre to see some of what she's been up to since, we last dived into some of her interesting stories while she was, a fellow. I was a fellow at that same time as well, so we were in the same cohort. So that's I guess I'm a little bit biased. I thought this would be a great episode. And because we kind of want to do that as well, to open up the platform to people we've had previously, but also future experts. So this is a part of that. But Deandre was a really strong candidate. Thank you again, Deandre, for sharing your time with us today. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, Gladstone, and I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this podcast. And, it's an honor to be invited back as an alum of the program so that we can talk about how the program has benefited my life and my career.
Thank you. All right. So first, I want to kind of ask just a few questions about your initial interactions with Climate Tracker, the fellowship, how you heard about it. We could start there and then touch a little bit on the stories that you worked on, the experiences you had with the journalists. And yeah, let's start there.
Okay. So yes, Climate Tracker, I found out about the program actually from Design, because I am the opportunities editor for the International Center for Journalists, their project called IJNet, the International Journalist Network. And we usually post opportunities for journalists worldwide on IJNet's website. And Design had contacted IJNet to promote an opportunity. I think it was this fellowship. Yeah, it was the same fellowship. Yes, she contacted us, and she was following up actually on it, making sure we posted and all that type of thing. And I responded, and she was like, so are you going to apply?
So, yeah.
I was like, okay. She saw I was from the Caribbean. So
Yeah.
I said, I'll think about it. And actually, I decided to apply after, she just nudged me a bit and like, you're going to apply? You mean? Come on, you Caribbean journalist. So I applied to the program and I got accepted, which was good. And I think this program has really sparked or pushed my interest in climate reporting because, I mean, we have in the Bahamas, we report on climate whenever we hear about hurricanes and those type things. But to go beyond that story and look for other stories that pertain to climate change, this fellowship actually opened my eyes to look at different angles instead of just hurricanes all the time. Other climate stories to be told in the Bahamas and the region that relates to climate change and also the need for climate justice. So this fellowship has really, inspired me. The sessions we've had has really taught me so much about things that I need to be looking forward to, even as it pertains to the laws pertaining to climate justice and environment, I should say, and also to certain things that we should pay attention to, even the ethics part of it as well, and also to there was one topic we talked about, the exclusive agreement. I can't forget that. That was one of our sessions, and I've been looking into that, returning to the Bahamas for a while. But yeah, it has really inspired me to do more reporting on climate justice and climate change in the region, and I'm happy I joined the fellowship and I signed up for it and got accepted.
Yeah, it's so interesting, even as you speak about that. I had a similar experience as well. The I had been doing some environmental reporting before, a lot of intersection with climate change and climate justice. But when I got into the fellowship, I kind of saw that there was so much lacking in terms of reporting, as you said, in our region. Um, and just because it was a seasonal kind of thing, like you said, it was only during hurricanes where you would hear reports of that. Um, and to think about where we are now, just to break away a bit from the question, um, I personally am seeing more coverage of this kind of news in locally. So to compare, like when we kind of got into the fellowship, where sometimes we had to literally be wrestling at like um intellectually, of course, with editors locally to try to help get them to see the relevance of these stories and to platform them. Compared to now, where they have the fervor. The editors themselves have the fervor. Some of them, and a lot of platforms have developed climate change desks now because of these. So it's interesting to see these changes. What do you think about that? I know you mentioned as well your role as the opportunities editor at the International Center for Journalists. That's one, and this is a big one. This is a big point for journalists listening as well. And that's one of the places that I was looking for opportunities as a journalist as well before, yeah, even before Climate Tracker. And it's good to, it's like, I would encourage journalists in our region that even opportunities seem few and far between, but when you find places like the IC International Center for
IJNet,
Journalists, yeah, there are opportunities there, and they're sharing them every
every day.
every
That's my
single day.
job.
So there's so much of it.
Yes.
But yeah, what do you think of the space now compared to kind of when we just started our fellowship?
I think the awareness now for climate reporting has gained traction in the region because of fellowships like this. Because when I was in the fellowship, I would actually also send my stories to publications within the region. Okay, I didn't just stick to my hometown, and they had the stories they would distributed and stuff. But I went beyond that, beyond telling my story just for the Bahamian audience. I wanted it to reach the wider Caribbean. So I submitted my stories to the 5Cs, Caribbean Community Climate Change Center.
Mm.
They have a newsletter,
Mm.
right? And they were asking for pictures for stories on climate. And I was like, okay, let me just send my stories in. And my stories, made to their publications. And then I also came across the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. That's another
Yeah,
organization
I
that
know that one.
shares climate stories pertaining to the region. And they started distributing my stories too from the fellowship. So I was like, oh, this thing is good, you know? So I think, journalists, we have to really market our work. Don't just, just you spread it around the region, not just within your community. Because someone in Jamaica needs to know what's happening in the Bahamas. And, he needs to know what's happening in Jamaica. So we have to create a network, a wider network, whereby we share our stories and keep it to ourselves. And this fellowship has really inspired me to push my work, promote my work more within the region and in my country.
Yeah, because I mean, we all can. This is something that we ended up realizing to working with each other, because we ended up working on a collaborative story as well during the fellowship. And I think all of us learn this when we kind of get into these fellowships with Climate Tracker, um, is is that this story about climate justice in the region, it's a bigger story, and each of us kind of has a piece of it,
Yes,
and when we kind of come together and put it together, it the, the perspective of this whole thing shifts. Is like we kind of get to really see what it is, and how some of this tracks back a whole, how it's a lot of this is historic in a way, like some of these effects on the environment, are coming from, way back in the day, from initially, like, just as in, we were getting industrialized, which also has to do with, the unfortunate history of slavery and colonization, which the Caribbean has a big part in. So it's like there's so much of this that we end up learning and figuring out, that we all have to kind of put these pieces together. So that was a big part of that as well.
yes, I enjoyed
Um,
the collaboration. Sorry, can I go?
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, I enjoyed the collaboration project that you, um, girl from Dominican Republic, right?
Elvira, yes.
Elvira, yes, and myself that we worked on Sargassum. All right, that's my first time doing a collaborative story, honestly, with journalists in the region. I haven't even done a story, a collaborative story with local journalists here in the Bahamas. So to do it on a regional level for the first time and to get the response that we got, because it was published here in the Bahamas, my newspaper published it. It was published in Dominican Republic. It was translated into Spanish as well. So to get that type of coverage for a story like that, and persons were talking about it, and wanting to know more about it, and I was happy to know that people tend to be interested in sargassum. All right, people were interested in the topic, and I have to even now do like a follow up, because some of the islands that we are expecting to get that mass of seaweed, to wash up on our beaches. So it provides stories for you to follow up on, stories for you to report, and you can even continue to build your reporting. It doesn't end there. It doesn't just end when we've done the story and we submitted it to Climate Track or we submit it to our editors. It goes beyond that. There is more reporting that has to be done to shed light on this issue. So that collaboration was really, 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 really great. I enjoyed that. And also, too, for me, meeting other journalists from other Caribbean countries for this fellowship, that was a big plus for me personally, because this is the first time I have ever had so much interaction with other Caribbean journalists. Sometimes I feel as though the Bahamas were a bit isolated from the region because we're in Atlantic and you are in the Caribbean Sea, and sometimes we don't even interact like that, even editors and all that type of thing in news organizations. So to have a fellowship like this that brings Caribbean journalists together on such a level whereby we can learn from each other, we can, you know, network with each other and have a connection. It's very important if you have a connection in another Caribbean country. It's helpful that you can tell climate stories and even other stories that are not related to climate. Something might be happening pertaining to crime, or some other political issue in another country, and I have to make connection with journalists in Jamaica or journalists in Barbados. And because of this fellowship, I have a contact right there. And we also have the WhatsApp group whereby we can share messages or get people's information. So it brings that camaraderie and that friendship that a fellowship should offer for us. So I really appreciate that aspect of it, because having another friend in another Caribbean country as a news reporter is very important, because our leaders are faced with so much right now. Look at the situation in Haiti. You see, so there so much has to be done with CARICOM leaders and journalists for covering this. All right, in addition to the climate stories, but there is, the situation in Haiti. So I need more Haitian journalists to join this fellowship as well, so we can have connections and tell so many more stories beyond climate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was definitely one of the more underrated parts of the, but like understated. I think probably is it.
Yes.
It was understated, but definitely a big key for us. Um, I wanted to kind of ask a bit if you could share some of your experience as the opportunities editor. What you know perspective, and how that's not only changed your perspective, but how that has enriched you with, I guess, things that you could share with other journalists to help them, because being a journalist is very hard.
Yes, it
It's
is.
very hard, especially if you live in the global south or in a region like ours that's considered underdeveloped.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, so being the opportunities editor for IGNet allows me to share opportunities with journalists worldwide. So my job is to create and curate, like basically search the internet for worldwide opportunities for journalists. And we publish in 8 languages. So I have journalists in other regions who would send their opportunities for me to publish on our English site. We have journalists in Latin America, Argentina, Brazil. We have a Russian team. We also have a French team as well, based some of them in Paris. And we also have, I'm missing out now, Portuguese as well. And I do the English part of it. And we also have an Arabic team that's in the Middle East, and also 2 Persian and Chinese editor as well. So they would send me opportunities that relate to journalists in their region. They translate them and put them into English for me to post on our website. And I would get opportunities for journalists who speak English that's worldwide opportunities, and also to the opportunities I share, because now I'm the opportunities editor. I make sure, because I'm from the Caribbean, I try to make sure that I have opportunities for Caribbean journalists as well, because I noticed that before there weren't too much opportunities. The Latin American team would send a lot of Latin American opportunities in, but it was just pertaining to Spanish speaking journalists, basically. So the English speaking journalists like us, who they consider Latin America and the Caribbean, there weren't too much for us. So I would make sure, make it my duty to go beyond and say, if I see an opportunity for journalists in the region, the Caribbean specifically, that I should, get that and post that and share that in our network. So that has helped me in terms of helping journalists worldwide, in addition to helping myself. Because when I look for opportunities, and a lot of them come to our desk as well, for me to share, I would look for opportunities that I'm interested in, okay? And I would use that as an advantage to apply, you see? So I was like, oh, okay, well, because I want to know what's going on, what's out there
Yeah.
for journalists. How could it also benefit me? Because I'm a journalist too, okay? So I'm
Yeah.
not going to leave myself out of the picture. If something comes for me to share on a post, and be like, okay, I want to be a part of that too. I'm not just going to say I'm going to post it and leave it. I'm going to apply as well. Like design asked me, are you going to apply? So
Yeah, no, and it's
yeah,
important. It's
uh-huh,
important too, because remember, even though sometimes you do share it, and one of the downsides to journalism being so difficult in our region is that there aren't that very many of us, and
right,
so a lot of the times you're also helping by throwing your name in the hat, because there
yeah,
aren't too many of these programs, and sometimes when they don't see journalists applying, they might the funders might think it's not a viable program.
right.
So it's important to as well, to kind of throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
think I got into as well. I'm going to represent the Caribbean, of course, and represent the Bahamas. And I recently participated in the United Nations Reham Al-Farra Journalism Fellowship. It's another opportunity that's always
yeah, how was that?
advertised and promoted on
How you did?
IGNet. Yeah, to me, that was the best part of my career for 2023, in addition to this fellowship. I did Climate Tracker. Our program lasted from 2022 to early 2023, right? Our program, right? And after Climate Tracker, I was a part of the Reham Al-Farra journalism program. And actually, that was my second time participating, because I participated in 2021 during the virtual program because of COVID. And we weren't allowed to travel during that time to the UN because, the pandemic and all that type of thing. So they promised us that, we'll have to compete again for a chance in the other fellowship class. So our time came around again in 2023, which was last year. So I was able to compete again. And only several fellows from the 2021 class and 2022 class got in. And I was one of them, thank God. So I was able to represent the Bahamas and the Caribbean, the only journalist from the Caribbean. I was like, yo,
Yeah,
you
that's
what?
crazy.
But I am so happy that I was able to attend the fellowship in person in New York at the UN headquarters. It was a 3-week program. And actually, the application is open now, and the deadline is this week for those who want to apply. Go and apply. And the program had really opened my eyes, because we covered the General Assembly. It was the 78th session of the General Assembly. We got to meet top UN officials. I also met the president of the General Assembly, who's also from the Caribbean, Dennis Francis. He's from Trinidad and Tobago. So he was happy, to see a Caribbean person in the fellowship. And I also met Selvin Hart. He's also climate advisor, actually, for the UN. And he's from Barbados. So, this fellowship opened doors for me to make connections and interview these persons and talk with them. And one thing Selvin Hart told fellows was that, he wanted journalists to do more climate reporting. He's speaking to me from the region. I was like, well, we're trying our best. And I even mentioned this fellowship, Climate Trackers Fellowship, to him, that we have opportunities like that in the region and fellowships and programs that inspire journalists to cover more climate stories, because he was like, more has to be done. I said, yes, more has to be done, but our region is so small. We don't have, some news organizations don't have the resources or the staff or the capacity to even say, send a journalist just to focus on reporting on the environment. That's in climate. That's just too much to ask news companies sometimes, because the staff isn't available there. Then also to funding for some of these stories and investigations. Organizations don't have the money for it. Some of them can't afford to pay reporters, but they ought to be paid. So there's a lot of issues facing the region as to why journalists don't do as much climate reporting as they should be doing. And we want persons to understand that, and persons like folks in the UN who wants it, but they'll provide the funding, for it, or some kind of support for journalists in the region if you want that type of coverage. That's how I looked at it, and I told him. But he understood, and he was, he told me he knows what's going on in the region, and I appreciate that. And then also to the fellowship, we covered so much things, from climate change to counterterrorism to women's rights, so much stuff, everything the UN thinks about. We had sessions on all of the SDGs and stuff. And also too, I was able to moderate a session on Act Now for a Coming Future, what's it called? Yeah, whereby we talked about this campaign that the UN have that promotes the SDG goals called Act Now, which climate action is one of them. So I was able to moderate that session and speak to some persons who were influential in promoting the SDG goals. So that was really good. And then also, to another highlight from the fellowship was I was on a live show with the host. Oh God, what's his name is again? The host, Ian Phillips. Yes, his name is Ian Phillips. I think that's what his name is. And we talked about the day during. It was like a live show where we gave a recap the day's events at the UN headquarters. So we would talk about everything that happened throughout that day, from the sessions in the General Assembly to the programs on ground and everything that happened, during the day. We would just go back and just give an overview of our events. And it was really fun as a journalist to get involved in UN television, UN reporting, seeing things they do, and how I could get involved as a journalist from the Caribbean.
Yeah, no, that sounds like an amazing opportunity. I think
You should apply. You apply?
No, I haven't applied, but I think that any journalist listening to this right now, because this is gonna today is Wednesday, it's gonna come out tomorrow. Please apply, because the deadline is still open. But what I would say is that these opportunities are so key, because it's so hard already, like you said. I mean, if you do have an interest in the environment, or if you do have an interest in climate change, you want to pursue reporting in that, because the stories abound. You might struggle, because, like you said, it is not funded in a newsroom like that. Not in the region as yet. I'm seeing internationally, because I've been doing some work. I mean, you and I both do work, with publications abroad, so we kind of know how that space is, as regional journalists. But those spaces now they're slowly getting funding for climate desks, and so they're able to kind of give us some stories, more regularly now and that kind of thing. So we really want to see some of that in the region because it would be helpful, locally. But I think the newsrooms, like you said, it's not for want of trying. It's also a lack of resources, like you said, staff, funding, all that kind of thing. Um, so that's and then these fellowships, they change, they change. I want to say change your life. It might be overdoing it, but it really changes your perspective. If you're a journalist out there, you're struggling, you don't know what you're good, because that is the precarious position most of us find ourselves in as journalists, where what am I doing? Like, what is this field? I mean,
Is it worth my time? I ask myself the question a lot of time. Is it worth my time? The amount of effort and energy I put into what I'm doing, and it's like it goes unappreciated, or I don't know what to say sometimes. Like, this ain't
it,
making no sense.
yeah,
Almost like,
yeah, and it's underfunded. It's
yes, and
like
then you
all this.
can't get paid and this and that. It's like, oh, did I waste my time with this? But then I remind myself that we're delivering a public service. What journalists do, our society needs our work. Our society needs our reporting. Our society needs credible journalists. All right, even though country can't afford it, but we still have to do our work.
Yeah,
So I'd be like,
yeah,
oh God, it gets discouraging at times, honestly, especially in the Bahamas,
yeah.
whereby so many veteran journalists have left the profession. Period.
Mm,
All we have in the Bahamas, we have a bunch of young journalists, kids coming out of school. That's what we have in the newsrooms, okay? And it can be frustrating. We have several senior ones, but then the majority are the young ones who just looking for a job. They're not taking it as serious as they should be taking it. I don't know how it is in Jamaica if it's like that, but they just come, learn a little bit of it, and go to another station, and then when they get sick and tired, you don't see them no more. It's like it's like a revolving door here in the Bahamas. That's how it is.
yeah, that which is sad because the human resource is a subject that we need to talk about because some people really believe that you can do business without investing in that aspect of it, and that's why you get businesses with revolving doors. But yeah, I mean, it is difficult already. But these fellowships really, as I was getting to, is they shift your perspective because you might be there struggling, as you said, getting discouraged, might be feeling some kind of despair, wondering what you're doing, and then you do a fellowship like what
Yes.
you have an experience like yours. You end up in New York talking to people from the UN, things you never thought you'd be doing in your life, and then you're like, okay, so
Let's
there
come
is
back
a
home.
yeah, and then you speak to leaders who tell you that we need more of what you're doing, and you know you feel the importance of it as well. You know what I'm saying? So these fellowships are so crucial, and I think that's, I guess, the point that I was trying to make. It's great to know that one of our own was selected. You were a really amazing choice. You're a great journalist. I'm glad they picked you, and I'm
Thanks.
glad you went and represented us. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping to see more of it. I'm hoping to see more of those programs opening their arms to people in our region, because again, it's not easy, and we do need more of that. So I don't want to take up your entire day, but I do want to talk about something that you've been working on, something that you've been researching, reporting, something that has taken your interest, something that you woke up maybe thinking, a story that you may have woke up thinking about this morning. Um, Maybe we could probably end on kind of talking about it.
Okay, well, I'm actually doing a lot of editing right now, a lot of editing these
Okay.
days. So I edit reporters' stories, and lately, even if I do a story, it has been surrounded the Haitian crisis
Mm,
situation in Haiti. That has taken headlines a lot here because we have a local Haitian community as well. So a lot of my reporting, even what I've done for the paper lately these past couple of weeks, has been on the Haitian crisis, what's going on in Haiti, how it's going to affect us here in the region. Because the other day, our defense force, our Royal Bahamas Defense Force, initiated a blockade in the southeastern Bahamas, blocking the borders from Haiti. So Haitians really can't enter like that. So we're talking, but those stories, those are the kind of stories I have to focus on now. I would like to do the climate stories, but like I say, short staff, this and that, no time. I have other work
Haiti
to do.
story, Haiti,
Yeah,
the
that's
Haiti
what.
story is pretty big. Yeah,
Say it again?
it's very. I'm saying the Haiti story is pretty
Yes,
big right now.
yes. So I think my headline tomorrow will be something on that as well. So it's like that has really taken precedence here,
Mm,
the Haitian situation, and because we're so close to Haiti, and a
mm,
lot of them are here in the Bahamas, and then we also had shanty town demolitions too. We call the Haitian villages where Haitians reside. A lot of them, the legal ones, reside shanty towns, and we've been the government has been destroying, demolishing homes in those areas throughout the islands of the Bahamas lately. So that has been priority in
yeah,
our news as well. Yeah. So I wish it was the climate story, but like the fellowship has really encouraged me and
mm,
really given me the time, I should say, to focus on climate stories
yeah,
outside the newsroom. Okay, because
mm,
there were stories I did on my own. All
yeah,
right. So
yeah,
I allowed the company to publish the stories in the paper, but that was on my own time, not the company's time. You see?
mm,
So on the company's time now, I have to focus on what's more important to the company
yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
facing crisis. And the
That's
the
understandable.
meetings CARICOM leaders are having now, the one they recently had this week
In
in
Jamaica,
Jamaica, right?
yeah,
Those stories, those were the top stories in our papers.
yeah, and no, I mean,
Uh-huh.
let's be real. That
Yeah,
story it's the story right now for our region
our region,
because
yes.
even though there are other things happening simultaneously, this is like there's so many things coming out of this. All right, for instance, like you said, that blockade happening, like there is the impact of the surrounding islands where oh my God, there's so many things there, but the impact of like the traveling, or I guess if you want to call that traveling or illegal immigration of some
Yeah,
of these
people migration.
Asians, yeah, into other Caribbean islands, things that have been happening for years, for a lot of
Right.
us.
Yes.
So it also just goes to show that this story is going back for years as well.
Yes.
This crisis has been developing for some time, and I think there are lots of lessons to learn as well for us as Caribbean islands, because it can get. I mean, it's not. I mean, we could be Haiti next. Like
You never know. Yeah.
it can. We're not special. It's just they're the ones it's happening to at the moment. But if we any of us were to ever get caught in a situation like that, that is the no man's land that we would be in because of what our region is right now.
Right.
So that is definitely a very interesting story. All of us are kind of,
Watching it
hooked
and
on it.
paying
Yeah,
attention. Yeah, and you're
yeah,
on it, know what's going to happen next. You see, the Haitian, the prime minister resigned. You see, Ariel
yeah,
Henry resigned. So
he
all that,
did.
this week, this week, yes,
Oh,
uh-huh,
because I
yes.
saw they were
So
trying to
it's
make a
like every
council.
day you turn, there's a new angle to the Haitian story. You got to
Hmm.
pay attention to. You see, so it's a lot. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. I mean, I really hope. Well, there is no hope in this. This really just has to play out because it's so many years too of history of politics and all these different things. So it really have to, I guess, hope for the best. Hope our leaders make the best decisions as well, and help how they can, because that's what we're finding out now is like if we ever get into these circumstances, it's us. That's it. I mean, we can hope that the US does the right thing, but really we can count on ourselves here in the region. And I think, if we can give any assistance to them, we definitely should be doing that. So
definitely.
yeah, it is a big story.
Yes, it is. Just like if climate, if something happened, related to climate change, or say a major hurricane or a major tornado or something breaks, that becomes headlines for weeks, months. You
Yeah,
see, all over the region. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again, Deandre, so much for your time. Thank you for checking in with us. It's been great to catch up. Um, I believe these strengthen the climate tracker family because
Yes,
we get to see that these things are important, so very important, and they change our perspectives, and then they change the trajectory of our careers as well.
it do.
So thank you again, and thank you everyone who's listening, or our listeners, for tuning in to another episode of the Caribbean Climate Calabash podcast. Take care of yourselves. Check out our episodes on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, and our new Caribbean website. And then you can check out Deandre Williamson's work. I'll include some links in the episodes. Thank you again. Take care.